In 2002, the disappearance of a young woman left virtually no evidence in a small Texas town called Georgetown. Several suspects were named, including her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, her father, and even strangers. 4 composite drawings were released by police. But with each day, month, and year that passed, everyone increasingly believed that there would never be an explanation for the mysterious disappearance of Rachel Cooke. Rachel Louise Cooke was born on May 10, 1982 in Georgetown. Her parents were Janet and Robert Cooke, and she had an older sister called Joanne Cooke. The family lived in Georgetown, Texas, USA. Rachel was a happy, loving, and active girl. She liked to take care of herself, and since she was a teenager, she would run each morning. At age 18, in the year 2000, after Rachel finished high school, she moved to San Diego, California, to attend college. Her boyfriend in Georgetown was called Thomas. They had been in a relationship since she was 14 years old. Rachel, who was quite mature, knew that a long-distance relationship would be complicated and decided to end their romance. But Thomas didn't take the breakup well. Rachel told her parents that he had cried a lot and that she was even worried about how he would deal with the breakup in the days following. The following year, 2001, in San Diego, Rachel met a boy called Greg West and they started dating. Greg was a very friendly guy and he supported her in everything. Rachel even took him to visit her parents at their house. Her parents later reported that the two got along very well. At the end of the year, Rachel, as usual, went to spend Christmas with her parents, and Greg joined them between Christmas and New Year. He stayed for a few days, but he had to return due to work in early January. Rachel remained in the city to attend her cousin's wedding later that month. On January 10th, 2002, Rachel's parents and sister left early for work and school, while Rachel stayed at home. Her father left at around 8 a.m, and at 9 a.m, her mother and sister left, noting that Rachel was lying on the sofa. Soon after, Rachel received a call from her boyfriend. She said that she had just woken up, but that she was going to go for a run, and their call ended at 9:15 a.m. At around 3 p.m, Rachel's father left work early and came home to meet her because the two of them had agreed to go to the mall to buy her clothes for her cousin's wedding. But when he got home, her father could not find her. He thought it was strange but decided to wait, imagining that she would return soon. After a while, he decided to call her and discovered that Rachel's purse and cell phone were in the house. He found this even stranger because Rachel always took her cell phone with her when she went out, especially if she was going to be gone for long. He called Shannon, a childhood friend of hers, who he knew Rachel was meeting later. Shannon informed Robert that they hadn't spoken yet that day. Later, Rachel's mother arrived home and Robert explained the situation. Janet's first thought was that Rachel might be at the Wildfire restaurant since Rachel had worked there. Perhaps she had picked up some extra hours to raise some money. Without thinking twice, Janet called the restaurant. On the call, the staff said Rachel was there, but she couldn't come to the phone because she was waiting at a table. Janet asked when her shift would finish, and the person informed her that Rachel would be working the whole night shift. Even though it was strange that Rachel had not cancelled her shopping with her father, nor told her friend Shannon that they wouldn't be going out that night, they were relieved to hear this. The problem was that the next morning when everyone woke, everything in Rachel's bedroom was in the same place and she wasn't at home. Janet called the restaurant back to find out what time Rachel left, and that's when they realized that the Rachel who had been working there that night was not Rachel Cooke. In desperation, Janet and Robert went to the police station to report Rachel's disappearance. According to Rachel's parents, registering her disappearance was very frustrating because the police didn't show much interest in the case. They said that Rachel might just have left without warning or run away, since many young people her age, 19 years old at this time, often did that, but soon returned. This explanation didn't make any sense to her parents. They couldn't make the police understand that there would be no point in Rachel returning to her hometown simply to run away again. In the end, the police recorded their report, but asked them to return home, and an officer would soon visit to question them. The parents returned home, dissatisfied. They couldn't do anything except start their own search. Greg confirmed to Rachel's parents that he had last spoken to Rachel the previous morning and that she had said she was heading out for a run. Her running clothes and sneakers were not in the house. They called her friends, but no one knew anything. They even called the local hospitals, and Thomas, her ex-boyfriend, upon learning that Rachel was missing, seemed worried. As a result, the news of her disappearance spread quickly. A small army of people was mobilized to look for her, especially in the area where she jogged. They distributed leaflets, and Greg returned from California to help with the search. After a few hours, an investigator finally met the family and told them that they should suspend their searches because they could contaminate possible evidence along the route that Rachel used to take. The police began interrogating those close to Rachel and identified several witnesses who had seen her during her run. A total of 5 people who knew her saw her running that morning. She even waved to some of them, and everyone reported that she didn't seem to be running from anyone, or that she was in any way distressed. She was smiling and looking great. The first neighbour saw her at 9:30 in the morning. She was close to her house and was warming up for her run. The last neighbour, who lived at a distance of approximately 200 metres from her house, saw her at 10:45. She appeared to be returning from her morning run, as she was quite sweaty and apparently tired. Some witnesses also said that they saw, at around the same time, a white car driving close by, which was not identified as belonging to anyone in the neighbourhood. People said that the car was being driven aimlessly, as if the driver was lost or looking for something. Some said that there was only a driver in the car, others that there was another person in the passenger seat, and one specific witness said that he observed a white car driving slowly next to a young woman who was running. The witness couldn't say if the young woman was Rachel, but considering the time of day, it was probably her. They also added that the young woman was speaking normally, as if she knew the driver of the vehicle. Composite drawings were made using witness descriptions of the suspect or suspects, and this is where the first problem began. 4 images were created. All the witnesses described the driver as being a man in his 20s with black hair, but some details were different. On speaking to friends of the missing woman, investigators discovered something that brought them their first potential suspect, Thomas, Rachel's ex-boyfriend. Thomas hadn't dealt with the end of their relationship very well and had constantly asked her to get back together with him. He even called Greg asking him to break up with her so she would realize that it had been wrong for her to end their relationship. Thomas was desperate. In Rachel's mother's statements, she reported that on one occasion Thomas had knocked on her door at 3 in the morning, drunk, crying, pleading with Rachel to come back to him. In addition, 2 days before her disappearance, Rachel had gone to a party with some friends and Thomas had been there. He pleaded with her again, but she said no, that she was no longer interested. She was already in another relationship. They had a very heated discussion. There had been no physical aggression or threats, but those present realized that the relationship between the two had changed. When interviewed, Thomas gave the police a solid alibi and no evidence against him was found. So, even though he was under suspicion, the police had to release him. Rachel's then boyfriend was also investigated, but it was confirmed that he had been in San Diego at the time of her disappearance and had no connection to the case. Both her mother, father, sister, ex-boyfriend and current boyfriend took a polygraph test and none showed any inconsistencies. Except for Robert, her father. In one single question, the equipment suggested that he was lying. The question they asked him was, "Do you know where Rachel is?" And his answer was, "No." The polygraph machine indicated that he was lying. However, upon further investigation, it became clear that as the days had passed and there was no sign of his daughter appearing, he had come to believe that she was already dead. At the time that he was asked the question, even though he answered that he didn't know, he was certain in his heart that she was already in heaven. Robert was ruled out as a suspect several days later. A reward of $100,000 was offered by the family to anyone who could report important information to assist the case. Over the course of months and even years, more than 1,500 leads were investigated, but nothing turned up. What the police knew was that something had happened between 10:45 in the morning, when Rachel was seen by the last witness, and 3 in the afternoon when Robert returned home. But there was no sign of a break-in. The house was locked when Robert arrived, and none of her belongings were missing. She most likely disappeared shortly after she was seen by the last witness. The case went cold, and nothing more was published. Unfortunately, Robert and Janet ended up having problems in their relationship and later divorced. But they always stayed in constant contact with regard to their daughter's case. Four and a half years later, in August 2006, a new lead generated a strong interest in solving the case. A man named Michael Keith Moore, a confessed killer of a woman during a robbery, told investigators that he was responsible for Rachel's kidnapping and death. There was no evidence that he was responsible, but his confession forced the police to take a new direction in the investigation. He said that he had been driving around the neighborhood looking for a house to rob. He saw Rachel running, and out of nowhere he decided that he wanted to do something with her. He followed her, then struck her with a hammer and put her inside the car. He took her to a quiet area, abused her, and strangled her to death. After that, he said he wrapped her in a tarp filled with rocks and threw her body into the Gulf of Mexico. He was taken to the location to pinpoint the exact spot, and the area was searched by professional divers. Nothing was found. The police didn't have much evidence against him. It was just his words. But even so, in November of that same year, Michael was brought before an American court for trial. Right at the beginning, the judge read all the accusations against him, so that he was fully informed of what he was being accused of and judged for. However, he declared himself to be innocent. That moment shocked everyone present. No one understood why he had confessed to the crime, then declared himself innocent in court. He later gave an interview saying that he had never actually committed the crime. He explained that he invented the story based on information already, which was publicly disclosed. He was already sentenced to life in prison and had nothing to lose. Confessing to this crime could bring him privileges in prison and agreements regarding his sentence already being served. However, he did not expect the prosecution to seek the death penalty, and that seems to have scared him. He was found innocent of the crime due to lack of evidence. In 2014, Robert passed away from natural causes. In 2018, 16 years after her disappearance, authorities announced that they had found a suspicious car similar to the one seen roaming the area where Rachel was last seen, and that this abandoned car had bloodstains. DNA tests were done. The information on where the car was found, where exactly inside the vehicle the blood samples were collected, and the results of the DNA tests are confidential. The police want to prevent anyone else from using publicly available information to create false testimony. However, the fact that they released this has caused many to believe that the DNA test was positive for Rachel. If it had been negative, they would not have released this statement. Since then, no new information about the case has been released, and the case remains open. Currently, Rachel's sister, Joanne, prefers to accept the idea that she is dead, not because she wants to ignore the matter, but her older sister is greatly missed and, in her own words, the news is always bad. She loves her sister very much, and continuing with this matter without a resolution only brings more sadness. It has already led to her parents' divorce and Roberto's death. In the last months before he died, he declared that he was regretful for not having been the father protector he should have been. Janet and Greg still want to know what happened, and will keep looking for an explanation until the end.